Good evening. Good evening. It's our pleasure to welcome you to the Forum's first lecture of our 2022-2023 season. We look forward to continuing to celebrate the Forum's 25th anniversary with all of you over the year. My name is Nate E. Daly, the Executive Director of the Forum. This is going to be a fun and special evening as we hear from some of Dallas's most esteemed architects who've been involved with the Forum, many of them for the entire 25 years, and all of them for most of that time. As you may have noticed in the pre-show, several of them actually spoke for the Forum in our first few years of presentations. And all of them have been active participants, and all of them are incredibly talented, insightful, and it'll be great to hear from them in a unique format we'll talk about in just a second. But also I want to recognize, I think in Dallas, we're fortunate to have some of the best architects, interior designers, landscape architects, and other design professionals found anywhere in the world. So let's recognize all of our great talent in Dallas. Tonight, as I've mentioned, is an incredibly special evening recognizing some of our esteemed talent here in Dallas. We'll have two moderated discussions. The first one with Bruce Birnbaum, Bob McFessel, Marcel Quimby, and Ron Womack, moderated by Kate Aoki. Our second conversation will include Russell Buchanan, Gary Cunningham, or Corky, Sharon Odom, and Dan Schilpe with Kelly Mitchell as moderator. The twist for both of these panels is that instead of each person presenting their own work, they'll show 10 images, but then they can't really say much about it because the four people on the panel besides them, their colleagues, will basically give them feedback about their work, about them as a person. So it's kind of like architecture crit in school, but hopefully a lot more fun and a lot more enjoyable for everyone. Following group one, we'll immediately go to group two, and then if we have time, we'll take a few questions at the end. So now I'm going to ask Kate and her group to come on up to the stage, and we'll get started. Thank you for joining us.
It's an honor and a privilege to be able to sit up on the stage with this esteemed panel and one former boss. So it's really such a delight to get to talk to you all. I don't really know why I'm here other than to look at my phone and tell you when you have to stop talking. Marcel is worried that there's not enough, that I might need to prompt in case you run out of something to say, which I don't see happening. So I am going to dispense with many formalities other than to just go down the line and introduce. I want to welcome Bruce Birnbaum, Bob McFessel, Marcel Quimby, and Ron Womack. So thank you all for joining us tonight. As Nate mentioned, they'll each go through 10 slides, spending a minute or so on those 10 slides just to very quickly introduce the project, maybe where it's located or what it is, but then the discussion will follow, talking about each designer's work and their influence on Dallas. So with that, then I will turn it over to Bruce, who's going to start us off.
Well, thank you. And a whole career reduced down into an Instagram reel. So here we go. Here's 10 slides. So this is a house over in Bluffview. We really like to connect to the nature. Another house over in the Preston Hollow area, and this is a kind of a benchmark project for Birnbaum Magadini Architecture. And you can see by this picture, which is an interior where the materials come from the exterior into the interior and then back out with that connection to the exterior. A home in University Park that's more of a modern Texas ranch style house, an infill urban project near the mansion, down by the mansion, and a very narrow site. We actually took advantage of the zoning by calling it a duplex that helped us really maximize the site. This is an interior courtyard shot, and through the great work of David Hawker, he introduced the fountain that comes out of the waterfall that comes out of the bridge. Another home in Bluffview. It just takes advantage of the natural site and a lot of glass and indoor-outdoor relationship. A home up in Lake Louisville. The stair that you see there goes up to the second floor and also goes down to a walkout basement. And if y'all are really paying attention, you can tell that we photoshopped out all the ceiling clutter, the lights. And then a home in Capel that backs up to a 5-acre floodplain. The 3 glass boxes that you see there really takes advantage of the view lines and the topography of the site. And then my last slide is a home in Preston Hollow. This is kind of epitomizes our design philosophies, and it's really a wonderful home on a corner. And if you have the opportunity, you should go by there during Halloween because it's really decorated very nice. And that's the end of my presentation, other than please be friendly.
All right, so begin.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Gosh, Bruce, I wish I had clients like yours.
No kidding. Sorry.
We just have had some really nice opportunities. Let me have your mic. We just have had some really nice opportunities, and Tristy Magadini, my business partner, for coming up on 25 years. We just have worked hard to satisfy their design programs, their lifestyle, and we always say that we're just a conduit of the design and making it a home for our clients.
Tell us how you got into pure residential. I know that you did a lot of different things earlier in your career, and obviously you've morphed in that one direction.
Well, it's really developed to where we have eliminated really all commercial work because of ADA requirements and just staying on top of it, building codes and thinking about exit requirements. And so we've had these just wonderful opportunities to work on these nice homes and to focus on residential design.
We were talking before the show, and I think that, Marcel, you have not worked with Bruce previously, but Bob and Ron have. Is that correct? Ron,
I have not.
sorry. So what was the project that you all got to work on together?
I didn't.
No, Ron.
Sorry. The wine was good at the reception.
But not enough.
Well, early in my career, I kind of wandered around. You know, my motto is I never know where I'll be next Monday morning. And so Bruce was kind enough at one point to hire me for a little while. And we worked on some big designer in New York's showroom.
Well, we worked on some commercial projects, some retail interiors up in New York. You helped me with a couple homes here in Dallas, and really actually taught me a lot about design and detailing. And residential projects, the ones that you see from this group, it's all about the detailing and eventually the execution by the contractor.
Yeah.
So first, I'd like to say that there's always a saying that you either want to be first or last on one of these things. So thank you for being first. I was working today. I'm doing a presentation at Preservation Dallas, a bunch of realtors tomorrow as part of their class on post-war architecture, particularly residential architecture. And in that, I was thinking about the influence of the Europeans and the Americans like Kahn and Wright, and then the Texans like Frank Welch or Art Swank or O'Neill Ford. Who are some of your influences you clearly, it's modern, but clearly it's also grounded in a regionalism that's quite lovely.
Well, I appreciate the comments. I would say that my partnership with Trissy and the way our business has developed has allowed us to, again, have these clients that let us experiment a little bit and develop this modern regional architecture. I think some of the design emphasis or some of the real background is that Tristy and I both went to the University of Arizona, and we were always designing projects that had to deal with a harsh environment. And so when you see our houses that have significant overhangs, we're thinking about the fenestration, how the house orientates on the house. And I think that college education and that environment really was a seed for our projects.
Right.
Are we done?
We're done.
Excellent.
Well done. All right, moving on.
That's right. These guys. Excuse me.
You're done.
You get to be done.
Thank you.
Bob gets to go next.
Okay. There's two buttons here. I think I can figure this out. There you go. All right. Okay, so I'm not going to show any residential because I know who I'm following here. So I'm going to show all institutional or commercial projects except for one at the very end, which is kind of completely different than what they do. So several of these are City of Dallas projects. This is the Prairie Creek Branch Library in Pleasant Grove, Dallas. 18,000 square foot library. It opened in 2010. One of the most significant things about this is that we actually recreated a prairie, which is a lot harder than one would think. It takes 10,000 years and a bunch of buffalo to really properly recreate a prairie, none of which we had, but you can see the prairie in formation here. This is an interior view of it. We were very focused on natural light. This project was City of Dallas's first LEED Platinum project, and we're kind of proud of that. This is a small project in Oak Cliff. It was taking a 1936 Baptist church that had been abandoned and converting it to a wedding chapel and meeting venue. Very simple, humble project that just worked with basically this little monopoly house of a form. And expose the interior trusses. Really, that was the big design move. This was really editing more than design, but it's proven successful. This is another City of Dallas project, Fire Station 6 near Fair Park, also LEED Platinum. This was in a neighborhood, as you know, that has many challenges, and we kind of reversed the formula where the apparatus is in the glass jewel box and the firefighters and the EMTs are hidden from sight, which is the way they wanted it to be. I'm at 2 minutes? Okay, I'll talk fast. All right, here's an interior of that. This is a Fairway Ranch in Roanoke. It was at Byron Nelson's ranch, which is now becoming a housing development. This was the amenity center in the pool house. This is a recent project, Vickery Park Branch Library, that Kate worked on in Vickery Park area, Vickery Meadows. The kids area of that, which we're very pleased with. And then this last project, the only residential project, it's on the boards in Marfa, Texas. It's hard to do anything in Marfa, but you can get shipping containers and metal buildings. So this is a workforce housing project to create 20 workforce units to help with the challenges of housing in Marfa. I'm done.
Well done.
Okay.
Okay. Anybody have a question or a comment?
Well, Bob, you and I have worked together before.
We have.
And it's been interesting. And one of the things I've always enjoyed about Bob's work is that the connection between historic preservation and architecture and sustainability. How do you make all that work?
It's all part of the same thing to us. We don't consider ourselves specialists in preservation. We don't consider ourselves specialists in sustainability. It's just these are values that we start with, and they kind of carry right through the design.
They work.
Well, we try. We try.
And, I'm excited, Bob, that a small firm like yours can do public work, because that is something that, I've tried forever to do that. But if you haven't done 10 of them already, you don't get an opportunity here. That's kind of the system. But the fact that you've done some and done really good work on it, I think is to be admired. So.
Well, thank you, Ron. It remains to be seen if we can continue to do work for the City of Dallas and stay in business. Each one of these is a little shock to the financial system. We do them every 3 or 4 years, but we enjoy doing them greatly. And the City of Dallas has actually been a great client for us.
That's great.
So when you work with the city, what's the pro of being able to work with the city and produce this type of work that's going to embody and propel the city?
Well, there are several things. The city has decent budgets, not great budgets, but decent budgets. They always have, they generally set fairly high goals. They want LEED Gold, they want LEED Platinum, whatever. The Vickery Meadow Park Library is our first non-residential zero carbon building. Zero carbon. It's LEED Gold, but it's zero carbon. When you work particularly with the Department of Public Works, most of your clients are other architects. who are working with the city. So there's a peer-to-peer relationship that's very useful there. I mean, we also work with librarians and firefighters and everyone else, but there's always an architect from the city's standpoint in the room. And they care very much about the impact of these projects on their contexts and their neighborhoods. So they're great clients.
Very quickly, we had an opportunity several years ago to do a few fire stations. We found the most important element that the firefighters were looking for was how to protect their food in their refrigerator. So, because there's different shifts and they would steal things, and so you would go into these fire stations and there'd be clasp locks on the refrigerators. So when you're doing those type of projects, are you interviewing the firefighters, and how do you deal with their idiosyncrasies?
Well, that kitchen that I showed has 3 different refrigerators for each of the 3 shifts,
Yeah.
and thou shalt not screw with the other shift's refrigerator. That's an absolute law.
We actually put our refrigerators in a locked pantry, so you could lock the pantry and they could have their dry goods and their frozen foods in a pantry and nobody could get to it. So think about that.
So we interviewed them. The city had a very good program. They have a standard kit of parts that we started with. But we went and visited a bunch of fire stations, and one of the things, and this sounds counterintuitive to architects because we like lots of daylight, lots of windows and whatnot. Every single one of the dormitories where the firefighters or the EMTs sleep, they had taped tin foil up over the inside of the windows. Every single one of them. So we said, well, why don't we not put windows here? And the firefighters just thought, what a great idea. So we did that. So there are no windows in the sleeping areas, but we made sure through clear stories and other things there was plenty of light in the other areas where they work and cook and eat and dine. And so far, so good.
Good
Out of
words
time?
good words to end on. Yep.
Okay.
Time to go to Marcel.
Good job. So I'm going to start off, everybody knows I do preservation. I'm going to start off with a non-preservation slide just because this is an overview of some of my favorite projects. And this was an MCI was in Richardson. I was a project architect when I was at HOK, and it was a great job to begin my career with. But then I moved on. So I'm going to talk about preservation, and there's going to be at least 2 to 3 slides. When there's 3, one is the oldest existing photograph of the building. The second slide will be what it looked like when I began the project, and the third larger slide is what the end product. And as you can see here, there's been drastic changes over the years to this house in Grapevine. This was Newton County had suffered a fire about 20 years ago. It was looking in bad shape. The county commissioner and judge stood out in front of the fire in front of a group of people and said, "No, you're not tearing it down." And it was a long haul, but it was a fabulous restoration. And this is another, historic home in Palo Pinto County that we worked on. Hall of State. I've had the opportunity to work on the Hall of State twice. This was about 12 years ago, and this is some of the rooms that we restored as part of that work that turned out to be great aspirations for restoration work, but it really turned out to be fixing the mechanical system, replacing the mechanical system, and doing some structural things to make sure the building would last for the next project. First National Bank in Stephenville, Texas, needed a lot of tender, loving care. This was another house that had, looked one way when it was built, and then modifications had happened post-World War II, and then we restored it back to its original appearance. And this is the oldest project I've worked on. I don't know if you can see the date or not, but it's 1846. About down in southwest Dallas County. This was for the park department, and they were really supportive of getting this house up, getting this historic log cabin that remains on its original site up and running. And this is my second go-round with the Hall Estate that I worked with Gensler, the most recent work, and we finally had enough money to restore the exterior of the project. And there we are.
Before anybody else comments, I just want to thank you for everything you've done to increase the advocacy for preservation in the town, in the city. We don't have a great track record, but you're helping, keep it going. So I really appreciate all the work that you've done. So with that, your time is starting.
Well, no pressure there. So we have worked together, including very recently. Marcel and our firm worked together on the Reverchon ball field project for the city of Dallas, I think successfully. But so I'm always fascinated by architects with deep expertise in preservation, because some of these buildings are not being used for even the original purpose of what they were originally done. And as you think about it as a designer, these are design decisions you have to make. You can't put it back just the way it was, because that building or the use for that building or those users no longer exist. How do you weigh that when you're thinking about it?
Well, that's an interesting approach, and there's standards we use, Secretary of the Interior standards, and at one extreme is restoring a building to what it was originally, which would, if you take it to the fullest extent, is like no electricity, no indoor bathrooms. We don't do that anymore. We stop shy of that. And one of the things I've learned over my career is, buildings, for them to remain in place, they've got to remain in use, and they've got to be useful. If you restore a building and it just sits there empty, nobody's going to pay to keep that building up, and that's not a good thing. So you've got to, there's a lot of juggling going on. How do you recreate, how do you restore the building back to what it used to look like, but at the same point in time, make it accessible, make it usable, functional, and someplace people want to go, and the owner can continue to afford to keep and maintain the building.
The best preserved building is a well-loved building.
Absolutely.
The Hall of State building is one of my favorite buildings here in the city of Dallas. I just wonder, all the work that y'all did on that, how do you find the craftsmen to recreate or refurbish the details that were put into that building?
Well, the first step is understanding what on earth those original details were. Because we've got to identify that and identify the treatment that needs to happen, and then write specs. And we are, researching, making phone calls to people, and coming up with a list of people that can do the project. And luckily there's one or two contractors in town that have really got a cadre of specializations, people that specialize, that are really helpful for that project. But and every project's different. And one of the things about what we do is it's not just specifying the material, it's writing a narrative about how each piece of that needs to be restored, which maybe we don't know the full story of until the specialist gets involved.
Well, Marcel, I hope that you can have an ability to teach a younger generation about preservation, of that history. It's so important. And Dallas doesn't know anything about that. We're too good at tearing things down.
We're really
build
good.
New, shiny stuff.
Unfortunately, we're really good at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but I hope you get to have an opportunity to do that.
Well, I try to be a mentor, and sometimes that's a challenge, but it's that's the thing that needs to happen. Agreed.
Did you have another?
Not yet. Well, I was just wondering, you have such a wide variety of building types that you've gotten to work on. Is there any one that really just is close to your heart that is your favorite? And because we all have a favorite project we've worked on, and why would that be?
And I've got two. One is obviously the Hall of State. I mean, it's the Hall of State is the best collection of art and architecture in one building in Texas, and a contender for one of the best in the United States. So, I mean, who could not have that as their favorite? And then the other one was Newton County Courthouse. That's a little town in East Texas, and that courthouse was the heart and the best thing they had. And the fact that the Commissioners Court and the judge stood out there and said, we need to restore this, when they could have made and some people did, make a goal of, make a decision like it's not worth it. And it was a tough haul, but to get that courthouse back up and working and operational and used and have the Commissioners Court in it was the right thing to do. So I think those are probably the two best buildings
Thank you.
that
Thank
are
you.
close to me, close to my heart.
Thank you, Marcel. Mr. Womack?
And I'm Ron. And here are my slides. And this is way too difficult. Who can just spend, a few minutes? Because they're all about stories. But we got our start doing housing projects. And this is one down on Commerce Street. And I think one of the things that was really great about this project is the first time we really experimented with chain link fence post pipe, trying to imitate being under a mesquite tree. And this is a project down on the Katy Trail, Buena Vista Townhomes. And we had an owner who's not a developer. And so those are the kind of projects we like because they let us kind of take a lead and, do a great project. And the whole thing about this project was trying to make a connection to the Katy Trail with the Millsap Stone and just the whole history of that area. And this is a corporate headquarters in Frisco for Mario Sinicola and Sons. And it's just raw concrete with hot dip galvanized downspouts and sunscreens. And pay particular note that the sunscreens are actually working, And this is the south side of the building because so many times when you're on design award committees and you see sunscreens and they're on the north side of the building, it's like, come on, give me a break, Don't just use it for a style element. This is a renovation of the power station. This one's down on Commerce, not to be confused with Corky's, and for Mort Meyerson. But this was a pretty low budget exposition space for Alden Pinnell. And this is a house up in McKinney, little ranch house that was really fun for me. We used just a very simple vernacular shed form and just remade that into a modern house. And we don't have the barn in this picture, and the whole thing is organized along these hedgerows that were in the land up there. And so we just organized the structure so that the four meadows or the pastures were all respected. And this was a very special house. This was my house. And I don't have it anymore. But this house is an Airbnb now, so if anybody wants to go stay in it and experience my work, and they also have concerts there, I'm told, but I haven't been invited to one yet. And this is a house for a very special man. And this was one of those projects that he was interviewing several architects, and I never understood why he selected me. And after about 6 months of working on the job, I asked him why he selected me. Was I the cheapest guy or something? And he said, no. He said, we were having a great dialogue, and I wanted that to continue. Well, as an architect, that's the best shit ever. It is. I've never had a feeling like that. And then we started to do another house for him right across the street. And it's not going to get built, but it's really special to have a client to want you to do another project for them. That means something worked out fine the first time. This is another house that's not going to be built. It's on a little ranch out near Weatherford. And this was my ode to Frank Welch. We had to use stone, and we had to use really like an 8 and 12 slope roof. And we had a pretty low budget, and house ended up coming in like at $320 a square foot, and they still wouldn't build it, But it's just my ode to Frank. And this last one is an image of and the interior in that house, and and with this, there's a quote by a guy named Johanni Palazma, who's somebody I really admire, and he's kind of the philosophical guru of architecture in a sense. But and the quote, a house, in fact, is a metaphysical instrument, a mythical tool with which we can introduce a reflection of eternity into our momentary existence. And a space like this for me has a spiritual quality, and that's what I'm interested in today, is how we do less design and more something that means something to us. Oh my God.
That was lovely. All right, there's a lot to think about and talk about.
Can I say one other thing? Yes, sir. I'm in such gratitude to be with all of you guys on this panel tonight. You know, we grew up in a pretty special generation, you know, connecting with the people we did with our mentors, and to be able to practice today and have those influences. And I'm just, you know, and I'm feeling the heat now of being the older generation. And, you know, so it's a really special night for me to be up here with all my peers in our generation. So.
All right, we've got 2.5 minutes to.
Well, I've got a question. I really love the fact that you've done 2 homes for the same guy, and they were across the street, and they're so different. Tell us about that. You know, did the program change, or did we just decide to do something different, or was that client driven, or was that you driven?
No, the client loved his house, but it's 2 stories.
Okay.
And he's got a health issue that makes it more difficult for him to go upstairs. So it's kind of that. And you know, and this client, the reason he is such a special man to me is that we love talking about design. And we get over there and we'll have a 2-hour session, you know, and you may not leave knowing any more than you did, but you had a damn good time doing it, you know. And so he's just been a very special man. Plus, his knowledge of art is just very rare. I mean, he's hung out with all the guys, and he's, you know, in fact, when you go over there, I go over to his house once a week to visit because his health is not very good right now. And he'll have other artists over there, or a filmmaker and a video professor, and it's like a salon, you know. And he's given me more inspirations about being, and taught me a lot about who I am, you know. But it's just a special person.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's just great. Thank you.
So, Ron, I echo what you said about this group and its humbling experience, opportunity to be here tonight. But I want to go back to what I mentioned earlier. You taught me a lot about detailing a long time ago. So do you like the big picture idea, or do you like the detailing? What is your favorite part of these type of projects?
Well, everything in between, you know? I mean, there's nothing better than getting out on a site with, you know, somebody like David Hawker or Kevin Sloan. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it's like the little ranch house up in McKinney. You know, I was having a tough time figuring out how to site the house. Mm-hmm. I mean, we knew where the views were, da-da-da. Kevin comes up there, and it's like, you know, let's respect these hedgerows. Let's make the structures define and reinforce these hedgerows. And that's the kind of shit I love. You know, I can connect with that. And Hawker's the same way. You know, you get out on a site with Hawker, and it's a fun time, you know, and I learn a lot. But then I want to transfer all that kind of inspiration into the, you know, to the conceptual plan of the house to make it mean something and have something a story to tell. But, you know, I'm a detail knucklehead, you know. I mean, I love looking at, like, El Croquis, and I love to read the articles, but I really love studying the working drawings, you know. That's what I really love. So I'm just, you know, you have people, I think a lot of our generation is kind of like this, that architecture is not a job for us, it's kind of our life, you know, and I kind of love that. I don't like this, you know, having job, you know, life, it's just that. But it drives the women crazy, the wives. And I'm on my second one. Some of you have more.
We could stay up here for another 3 hours probably, and I wish we could, but we have to turn it over to group number 2. So thank you so much.
I'm going to just repeat what Russell just said to me. That's a tough act to follow. Thank you guys for being the guinea pigs. I'm Kelly Mitchell, and I am so honored to be able to introduce these architects whom I've always admired, and I just love their work. So first we have Russell Buchanan, Corky Cunningham, Sharon Odom, and Dan Shipley.
My turn.
Your turn. Sorry.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you to the forum for putting this event together. I'm going to try to go through these slides pretty quickly. It's going to be a complete overview of 10 completely different projects, different scale, different materials. This first project is for the Dallas Arboretum. I got this project from Chuck McDaniel at SWA. He had won a competition to do a edible garden, and they wanted, talk about Project Creep. This one started out as an open air kitchen to cook vegetables that they were going to grow out in the garden. And from day one, it morphed into a really special facility. It does have a kitchen. It's a demonstration kitchen. It has a large area for gathering, and it's right next to this beautiful garden. If you haven't been out to the Arboretum, it's just a beautiful garden of all edible plants. This next project is a 3-unit condominium in Oak Lawn. If you've ever done a project in Oak Lawn, they are very, very challenging because of the zoning. It has a special zoning. And this project was an attempt to really push the envelope of the zoning restrictions. There are height restrictions, there are setback restrictions, there's just a lot of restrictions. And ultimately, this was a project that really I felt was the first one kind of ground up that was a special project, a fabulous developer and owner. And after that project, we went on to do this next project about a block away. And again, just a great project to work on, a lot of fun, fabulous owner, fabulous general contractor. This is a 4-unit condo in Oak Lawn. This is a crazy project right here in the Dallas Museum of Art. Gary and I were asked to do 2 facilities, one up at UTD and one here at the DMA, but both for the Edith O'Donnell Institute of History. And this is a digital library that's up on the 2nd floor next to the existing library. And there were a lot of restrictions on this, particularly the height. The ceiling height was at 8 feet, so we put a mirror on the ceiling, and that gave the illusion that it was twice as tall. This is a fun little residence that's going on the market tomorrow if you want to buy it. It's a fun little residence over in Lakewood. Great owners. I met the owner. They lived across the street from us. We became fast friends, and 20 years later, they bought a lot and decided to build a house on it. So a lot of fun memories with them. They love the house. It's using a lot of reclaimed materials. The wood is reclaimed snow fencing from Wyoming. The main body of the building is recycled metal, so it has a rusty patina to it. Fun project. This is a project that I've actually had the pleasure of, Ron mentioned doing a project for a client and then having that client come back and do another project with him. This is that case. We did a house, which I'll show in a second, for an amazing lady here in Dallas. And it was too big. So she sold it, and this one is much smaller. This is about 2,200 square feet. You can't see it, but on the other side of the building is just a spectacular view of the Calatrava Bridge and downtown Dallas. The idea of the building was to create these layers and filters that you meander through until you reach the view, which is just a panoramic view. It's up on a slight cliff too, so it gives you a pretty great advantage. This was the house that we did for her, 8 or 10 years ago, and it's down in Kessler. Both of these are a couple of blocks away from each other in Kessler. Kind of a fun little house, kind of an interesting layout. The parameters were that the whole house, both of these, have to be on one level, so that if she ever did have any health issues, she could still get around. So fun little house. This is an absolutely crazy project up at Urban Reserve called the Cube House. It is exactly 2,000 square feet, and it basically features these two cubes that just slightly rotate in order to fit on this very, very compact site. And this project is down in Kessler Woods. One of the coolest clients, you talk to clients about program and, what spaces they want. And at the very end of the interview, the guy said, Russ, the one thing I really want is I get up and early in the morning and I like to watch the sun come up. So we designed and oriented the house so that in the morning it faces east. So he can get up and make a cup of coffee and sit outside with his dog and watch the sun come up. And this is the last house on the list. Very, very experimental. This is in Highland Park on Mockingbird. And this building is about 4,500 square feet. It uses a insulated panel that is ultra energy efficient. And when the solar panels went on the roof, it is absolutely zero energy cost. So a very, very experimental project, but very rewarding. Great client, a lot of fun.
Okay, we have a couple of minutes. I'm going to give us 2 minutes.
Well, I'll say you're the minimalist in town. And it's been awesome to see your work evolve. He also didn't tell us about his amazing furniture work. So I got the chance to work with Russ early on, and it's just always, never know what he's going to come up with, but it's always flawlessly done.
Thank you, Gary. We have lots of stories we could share with the audience about our early days, and maybe we will in a few minutes, but thank you very much.
Go ahead. Go. Russ, you and I had the pleasure of working together with this madman for a number of years, and that was crazy. I think we worked on Addison together, and maybe that was it. Maybe that's when I blew a plug or something. Anyway, your work I've always admired. I love the materiality of it. I love the risks you take. I just think, minimalism is, I think you go beyond because there's a honesty in those materials that you select. It's not a minimal, it's not the minimalism that some people grab onto, one material, one style, one whatever. So I like the chances you take,
They get me in a lot of trouble.
Well, I would think so.
Well, I'll pick up on that idea. So you know how to build stuff. You actually build stuff yourself. Tell me about the problems that leads to when you rely on other people to build your projects. Expectations.
Well,
really.
yeah, it's always difficult when a project is burdened by a really tight budget, first of all. What we try to do, and I learned this from Gary, was you have to be active and involved in the process of construction, and that means going out to the job site. It means engaging with not just the general, but even some of the subcontractors, and be friendly with them, encourage them to do their best work. So a lot of getting a project built and getting it done correctly is just being active during construction. And they still are not perfect. There are always issues that come up that you wish it had been a little better, or you wish it had come out a little more cleanly or crisply, and that's a learning process. You learn over time how to improve on those. But like I said, Gary taught me how to properly engage and communicate with contractors and subcontractors. That's ultimately the greatest lesson from Gary, was watching him and listening to how he communicates with others at the job site. He's the king of construction.
Just bring beer. It's a pleasure to be here. Several images discussing relationship between building and place, or building and site. First is a Dogwood Canyon Audubon Center, where the building actually floats above the ground plane because the water has to drain from the front to the back to get to the creek. So that kind of informed us, like a lot of things in our work, kind of how you relate to the site and how you navigate things like hydrology or whatever. This next project is a house in Wimberley, Texas, where at one end you're cut into the ground 4 feet, and the other end you are actually barely peeking above the trees. Not anymore because the trees have grown, but very kind of concerned about how we impact the neighborhood and the tree line. Don't want to be sticking out. This next project is University of Dallas Haggerty Art Center, where we added on to 2 existing O'Neill Ford buildings built in the 60s for an amazing man, Lyle Novinsky, who planted all those trees out there. And we had to insert these buildings in, did not want to mess with the trees, did not want to affect accessibility in the horizontal, and also did not want to mess with the Eagle Ford shale soil. But the most important thing is the trees. This is the front door to the project, walking across a bridge into the trees. So the buildings are very much secondary to the place. This is quite different. This is in the middle of a parking lot, Northwest Highway near 75, for Half Price Books, a wonderfully crazy client, where we just did an office box with a lot of exterior space and actually built this kind of cool gathering space in the southwest corner with some trees if they ever make it alive. Hawker. It's not David's fault. But you know, a very different site and different conditions because you're isolated into this area of just pavement. A neat little church project on the edge of downtown Dallas for a very ambitious church, where we took a 1924 Packard showroom and service center, and we had too much space, so we actually excavated part of the building to make outdoor spaces and left the paint as it was, planted some vines. Again, very ambitious client, very gutsy, and it's doing really well. And lastly, a little narthex for the Philip Johnson Peace Chapel, which was a hoot to work on. Very simple palette of concrete floor, clay walls, and some glass windows.
Gary, I have so many questions I could hit you with, but I'm gonna at least narrow it down to one. You know, I used to drive from my apartment to downtown, and I would weave through town and stumbled across the powerhouse when you were working on that project. That's when I knew I wanted to work for you. It was amazing to see that project come together. Can you talk with us a little bit about what that project meant for you as in terms of your career? Because that really launched you well beyond just a local architect. In my mind, it did. You won an AIA award for it at the national level. I mean, it really caught everybody's attention. Did it have that kind of meaning for you, or were you glad it was over?
Well, it's a good question because Sharon is going to talk about that in a second, because we worked together on that, collaborated on that project over 30 years ago, 1989. And it was a journey because we had a very interesting client, Marlene Meyerson, who really just tested us the whole time. And we were not allowed to even go take time to do the drawings. We had to start construction. So we started cleaning stuff out. But it was an amazing journey. And I think I really have to thank the clients, I think, and thank Sharon for her patience. It was a workout. And it was 1 year. We started the project and moved in a year later for his 50th birthday.
We always argue because I think it was a year and a half.
It was exactly 1 year.
Well, if you haven't seen it, it's a landmark project. It's absolutely done, and it's a credit to your creativity, your detailing. Everything about it to me was so perfect for that kind of building.
You know, it taught us that the process doesn't have to be the same every time. We think that we have to have a certain path, A to B to C. And when the client goes, no, you can't do A, B, and C, you got to start with D, you know, and then you go, damn, okay. And after that, we just started going, we don't have to do the same thing every time. So again, we have to really thank the client.
It was a true discovery exercise.
Yep. Microphone.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, I'm waiting for you to talk.
Oh. What I was thinking about your project here with PJ, Philip Johnson, and was that his last project?
Perhaps.
And what was that experience like to work with this icon who I guess was kind of losing it because he was elderly, and he's got this project there for this wonderful client, and it took forever to get going, right? Because they had to raise funds. And then how do you get involved, and how does that, you know, how do you work with this genius when you're a genius? And I know you have things that, you know, you might want to do differently. So how did that all come together?
Well, we have to thank Rick Patel, who, you know, Rick, I can't keep track of the number of projects that Rick drugged me into. You know, it's just like endless. Every time I think, oh, that was Rick, Jesus. Rick got me involved because Philip needed someone to help him do the religious artifact stuff. And the best part about that job was going out there and hanging out in the glass house in New Canaan and sitting at his kitchen table where I would steal pencils out of his pencil holder because he chewed on them. So I would take a bunch of them back and hand them out to the office, and everyone has, you know, Philip Johnson's teeth marks. But he was pretty ornery. He didn't like me a whole lot. I think he thought I was an interloper, or something. And I was straight, so that kind of irritated him more.
But I got to tell you, you guys, Rizzy and Tom and whoever else worked on this, did an amazing job to take a blob and make it this beautiful architectural statement. And I'm being kind. I'm not trying to be, you know, mean. That it was Philip's blob, period. But anyway, kudos. And thank you for teaching me as much as you've taught me over the years.
Well, thank you.
This group included.
All right, Sharon, you're on.
Oh, I thought Dan got to say
Look out,
something.
Dan. Didn't have time.
I'll pick up with you.
Okay. All right, that's me. This is the powerhouse.
Where's your mic?
What? Mics. Too many things with two hands. This is the powerhouse that Russ mentioned. We did this in the late 1980s. This was important to me because it really was one of the first projects that I had complete involvement in from start to finish. He says a year, I say a year and a half. I mean, we were on that site every day, starting with demo, trying to piece together all these pieces and try to understand what we had and catalog it and save everything because we knew somehow we'd use it again. And it was just really about stripping away to see what the building wanted to be. This is a project in Plano, the Prince of Peace Catholic Church that I worked on with Gary in the 1990s, I believe. Really tough budget, tough client, tough site, but we made a nice place for them. This is a project that I did after I went on my own. This is a duplex on Normandy for Diane Cheatham, Urban Edge Developers. A church that I did in Irving, Texas, Plymouth Park Church of Christ. Tough project, wonderful committee of people, a learning experience. I had no earthly idea how the Church of Christ worshipped or what they meant. All I knew is they didn't allow pianos in the service. The interiors, they came out of, as I researched and they shared information with me, we learned that they came out of the Shaker movement years and years and years ago, and so I wanted the interior to be as stripped down as possible. Very simple maple, birch, and cherry. This is a 12-unit complex, townhouse complex in the Knox Street area. Again, for Diane Cheatham, Urban Edge Developers. Challenging project. Sweet little residential interior, exterior remodel for a really wonderful lady in Lake Highlands. She had recently retired and was widowed and wasn't sure what she wanted to do with her home. So we kind of stripped it back, and she vacillated between selling it and moving somewhere or doing something to it. And so we just stripped it away and kind of modernized it. She's a cook and wanted to be in the center of everything. Her kitchen we opened up the entire, space, and she entertains and hangs out in the living space and cooks most of the day if she's not gardening. And then this last project is a project I've been working on with Gary for the last 3 years. It's a beach house in South Padre Island. Wonderful client. Just tough 3-year project. The living room is on the 3rd floor, living spaces, master bedroom. So this is kind of his view out, or not his view, but he gets a view out to the ocean. I couldn't show enough slides.
You should talk first since you didn't say anything last time.
Well, you three have a lot of long history, a lot of experience together, and I could go on and on about what you could learn from Corky. You mentioned the most valuable lesson. I'd like to hear the least valuable lessons you've learned from him. But we don't have time for that right now. But so and yeah, I can believe that. She said Billings. But at any rate, any of these projects that y'all did together, I mean, and you're not even showing Cistercian. If I had done Cistercian, that'd been it. I would just quit right there. Because I could never have done anything any better than that. And the same with Mort Meyerson's. I mean, those are just such tremendous projects. And they still hang together today. As far as I know, I haven't been in one of them for a couple of years, but anyway, congratulations for accomplishing all this stuff. Thank you. It's incredible.
It's been a weird journey.
She said it's been a weird journey.
It's been a weird journey.
And I have to say that Sharon is one of the most amazing architects I've ever worked with. And it's been over 30 years we've worked together, and her capacity for the really big and the really small is just mind-boggling. And these projects that we've worked together on are just inseparable. I mean, if she was not involved, they wouldn't be here. Is that important and that undervalued in the community? But on this project, she ended up having to haul half the subs from Dallas because the contractor down there, was lazy. So,
He wasn't lazy, he was just stuck. COVID happened.
And he was a misogynist too, on top of that.
But he was a young gentleman. And he thought I was his mom. No, it's just been great knowing these guys and following your work. And
gosh, we're finished.
Almost. But she mentioned all the other people that have come out of your office. Great architects. There's just a whole ton of them. doing wonderful work, and they're going to
Why do you
replace
think we
all
did
of
good
us.
work? Those people.
Somebody had to do the work. Okay. This is a building, a little building. I've done several buildings at East Dallas Community School, Montessori School. This, in a way, really represents a lot of our projects. Very modest projects, never are going to win design awards or be published, but hopefully are meaningful, to the people who use them, and we can. And that's really, it's great to get some press once in a while, but it's really a lot more meaningful when that your projects, your buildings are really being used and being appreciated. On the left is a house we did maybe almost 30 years ago. On the right is an addition to that house in Bosque County we did maybe 15 years ago. House in Highland Park is like a first effort at a real grown-up, sort of dignified grown-up house. And still there, one of the subsequent owner tore down the stone wall in front there for some reason. I stood with the mason and actually picked out the stones and showed him how to build that wall. And then in a brief about 45 minutes, it was gone a couple of years ago. There's a park pavilion, Valley View Park, a project we did for the city of Dallas. Little box building down in the Cedars neighborhood. That's where we have our office. Project in Galveston for the Sea Scouts, which are kind of part of the Boy Scouts. This is right on the bay. The Sea Scouts go there, are there for a week or so, learning about sailing, about nautical skills. And so the middle 3 floors are all the cabins, and those cabins all open directly onto a outside deck that runs around the perimeter. So it's like being on a boat. So the idea was to sort of extend the boat experience through the whole through the dormitory as well. It's kind of a boat and dry dock kind of metaphor, I guess. Interior of a house up in the Pacific Northwest. When I look at that, it makes we try not to line things up too much. Everything kind of jumps up and down a lot. I think that's kind of a theme. But anyway, there's a big view on the opposite side. This is the view back to the trees on the hillside. This is not a professional photograph. One of the guys in the office, Kurt, took this photograph, but this is a recent project just completed in May. It's at Carpenter Park, downtown Dallas. Hargraves, landscape architects, hired us to do this little project, smack dab under the 345, which is supposed to come down someday. I don't know what that means for the building, but we designed it with a roof, even though it's already under a roof. So if it comes down,
It'll leak.
It probably will leak. But anyway, it was. We don't do that many elliptical buildings, but it seemed like the right thing to do under the curves of this highway. And if you don't know Carpenter Park, it's really a kind of a connector park, connects Deep Ellum with the downtown, and then our little pavilion building also sort of connects in the same way. It has this kind of open space through it. There's restrooms and concessions space in there. Another house, this is that we did up in the Northwest. We've designed 3 houses up there in the kind of Puget Sound area. And this one was just completed about a couple of years ago. This is a professional photograph. And this is a project we currently have under construction. We're trying to finish it now. Finishing is always hard. But this is over near Love Field on Midway Road. That's number 10.
Dan, you aren't the general contractor on all of your projects, but that is a role that you have played. Is that still an active role that you do, or?
Well, we happen to be doing it on this one right here.
Yeah.
It's not something I recommend that people do. It's really a way to take your losses as an architect and extend them.
Yeah.
Because when an architect builds something, it's a conflict of interest because you're always sharpening corners. You're never cutting corners, and it's like it's excruciating. It can be really hard. So, I mean, most of a lot of the projects you see, we're lucky enough to find other, real contractors to do that. But once in a while, they come along and we can't resist them, and they're painful. But
Well, and you built your own house, though,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Fairly recently. Are you still working on it, or
Of
is
course,
it? Yeah. Just, I know the last time I asked you,
No,
you said it was not quite finished, but that you were getting pretty
we're closing
close.
in on it. It's like that calculus. You approach zero, but you never quite get there.
Right.
So we're always getting closer to zero. But it's the people who built this house for, they saw that house and they liked it and liked the quality of the detailing, and we said, well, the only way we can do it without spending $1,000 a square foot is for us to be in charge of it. So we did it. It's really hard to say no when somebody comes in and says, hey man, that really looks great. I'd like to have one of those.
Well,
we're all suckers for that,
Well, congratulations on your projects. As Mark Lamster said, they're a poetry of details. And having seen your house, it is just one executed detail after the other, just beautifully done.
You have to come over when it's
Yeah,
closer
I'll
to
be-
zero.
Dan and I went to school together in Austin back in the 70s, and we would skip class 3 or 4 times a week and go out and drive around looking for barbecue and sketching with Bic ballpoint pens. And Dan always kind of went with the flow, and he still does. In fact, he taught me one of the most important lessons in my life. Early on, I took him to a job site on the house we were working on. I was obsessing about everything. And after about 20 minutes of me whining, he just kind of looked at me and said, Corky, you just got to relax, man. And I'm serious. And that like hit me in the head. Whoa. But the thing is, your work does represent this kind of, you're relaxed about things and you go with the ebb. And, and you're not trying to control things, but you obviously are. But you're a real amazing way of just letting things kind of happen, like a river. Like a river.
Like a river. Well, I wish it sounds so easy the way you put it, though.
It's not.
Well, it goes back to what y'all were talking about, Russell, about even if you're kind of in charge of the building, you still have all these subcontractors, all these people, and you have to go, and I'm talking to them to find out what they can do, what they think about this problem, and I try to understand you're always working with these guys, and they aren't used to that, and they actually kind of dig it in a way once they find out that what they're doing really matters. And so you can really gain their confidence, and I'm always try to have a lot of respect for everyone on the job site, even the guys carrying the sheetrock. Even that's a hard job, and so but it's great. It's great. It's great to be able to think of these things. They start from some little idea, and then they end up as these built places that you can walk into, and sometimes they don't leak.
All right, I think that is all we have time for. Thank you so much, all of you.
Bob, Bruce, Marcel, Kate, Kelly, Russ, Corky, Sharon, and Dan, 10 incredibly talented people sharing their lives and their talents with us tonight, and thank all of you for attending. Good night.